my name is Dr. Ron, and we're going to talk about the acupuncture meridians today. And we're going to use Clark, our friend here, to be able to display the acupuncture meridians and the acupuncture points. And first, let's talk about a little bit of the history of acupuncture. Acupuncture was basically discovered or invented, however you wish to look at it, over the last 3,000 years. And the Chinese found that our body not only had its physical aspect, but it also had an energetic aspect as well. And this energetic aspect flowed through specific channels in the body that they chose to call the acupuncture meridians. And these channels relate to all the organs in the body and all regions of the body as well. So for instance, not only is there the heart here in the middle of the chest, but there's a heart meridian. And the heart meridian runs down the inside of the arm. And so each of these acupuncture meridians was believed to have a direction, a flow, and one flowed into the next, one meridian then flowed into the next and into the next, creating a complete cycle of flow of energy through one day or a 24-hour period. And during 2 hours of each day, this wave of energy, you might say, was focused more in one meridian and one organ than any other organ in the body. And in a sense, it actually was reasonable because, for instance, the stomach is strong in the morning, in the early part of the day. And that's when our digestive system is the strongest. The liver, which is one of the great detox organs, is the strongest in the middle of the night. And it makes sense because our body would be resting and cleansing itself to get ready for the next day. And they found that there were 12 of these meridians on each side of the body, and they completely duplicated themselves. For instance, not only is the heart meridian on the left side, but the heart meridian is also on the right side of the body as well, and it runs over the exact same structures on the right side as it does on the left. More or less, allowing for a little difference of internal organs on the inside. For instance, the heart is slightly located in the left side of the chest. That's why we put our hand over our left side of the chest when we're saying the Pledge of Allegiance or something. But the meridian is the same on both sides of the body, the right and the left. Now, an interesting thing was that not only was there the physical heart, which whatever affected the heart could affect the acupuncture meridian, but the acupuncture meridian could have a powerful effect on the heart because it was the life force. It was the flow of the life force. And although the meridian is said to begin under the arm and run down to the little finger, the meridian actually begins deep inside the body and runs through this heart area. But we can't treat those deeper regions of the body, but we can treat the areas where the heart meridian is said to run, and therefore have powerful influence energetically on the physical structure known as the heart. So with this vital energy, which science itself is beginning to find out about, there were many ways that this energy could become disturbed in a person's body. More commonly was dietary indiscretions or imbalances. Traumatic injuries was a great one, but the Chinese also found that not only physical conditions such as diet and trauma, physical trauma, could create disturbance in the flow of these acupuncture meridians. And keep in mind that by disturbing the meridian, there was always the potential to disturb the organ that that meridian fed or nourished. But the Chinese also found a direct connection and link between the seasons and the times of the year, but also, and very interestingly, a direct correlation between various emotional states and disturbance in the acupuncture meridians, then leading to disturbance in the physical organs. And the Chinese felt, or discovered, that by releasing disturbed energy, we mean excess or deficiency, for instance in the heart meridian, then we could affect emotional release of emotions which were being held, often subconsciously, and a person would go through not only a physical healing, but they could also go through an emotional catharsis, an emotional release and regeneration as well. And they essentially broke all of these meridians down into 5 primary categories, known as the 5 elements of Chinese medicine. And each organ and each meridian in the body in Chinese medicine fell into one of those 5 categories. Let's do an example. If a person experienced worry and anxiety about their future financially, about their job, something like that, where it was somewhat out of the person's control and they felt a lot of anxiety and tension about this, it's very likely that it would disturb what the Chinese called the earth element, which is our sense of stability and comfort being on the earth physically. And that had 2 meridians. It had the stomach meridian, and it had what the Chinese called the spleen. And the spleen also includes the pancreas. And it's actually known now that these organs, which are energized by the nerve plexus, found in what we call the solar plexus, below the sternum and above the navel, this abdominal area, where this largest nerve plexus actually outside of the brain and the spinal cord is located, that this could be powerfully affected by worry, tension, anxiety, anger, and fear, and could in turn affect the organs found in this region. So for Chinese diagnosis, they would often ask what season a person felt worse in, there being essentially 5 seasons related to the 5 elements of Chinese medicine. The physician would ask what time of day a person felt worse. They would ask if they have any types of food cravings or food sensitivities. And they would ask if they have experienced any powerful emotion or continue to experience any powerful emotion. And these would often, along with physical symptoms related to the organs, along with, very interestingly, the region of the body that acupuncture meridian flows over. So for instance, if a person had a condition of the stomach, for instance, and a disturbance of the stomach meridian, because the stomach meridian begins below the eyes, runs over the face, up the head, down the throat and chest to the toes, it would be possible that a person with a stomach condition could have sinus problems, could have problems with the eyes, the nasal area, the face in general, the mouth, and even the teeth. Actually, the problem could be originating in the stomach, even though the person's symptoms would be experienced in the face. Another example would be the gallbladder. And the gallbladder meridian begins at the corner of the eye, runs all over the side of the head, continues down the neck, over the shoulder, down the side, and down to the toes again. And the gallbladder is related to resentment and anger. And if a person had resentment or anger, which most of us tend to have to some degree or another, but if it were a primary issue that was dominating this person's vitality and emotional state, And because the gallbladder has to do with digestion of fats and oils, if the person, say, ate a very rich diet, excessively in oils, then they could potentially develop a problem in the gallbladder meridian and have headaches, since the gallbladder meridian runs all over the side of the head. They could also develop conditions of the shoulder, pain in the shoulder, tightness of the shoulder, the side of the body, the hips, because the gallbladder meridian runs over the hips and actually right through the sacrum area, the very lowest part of our lower back, before going on down into the leg and into the toes. So, from an emotional state, from dietary indiscretion, and of course, by trauma to a local region of the body, you could affect this gallbladder meridian and actually create a setting for symptoms that you might never associate with an internal organ, with a dietary condition, with a traumatic injury. And yet, without clearing that meridian, it might be difficult, if not impossible, to actually clear up the physical condition that the person would experience. Now, among the classic ways that the Chinese used of evaluation and diagnosis, of which there were many, they also included the famous pulse diagnosis. And this is where the practitioner would feel the pulse at the wrist. The problem with this system is that even with masters of acupuncture and Chinese evaluation and diagnosis, the practitioners would not come up with the same thing. Their diagnosis could often be very different. And so what we've done now is we've attempted to bring acupuncture into the modern day world. And to do this, we use a system called EMI, which stands for electromeridian imaging. And electromeridian imaging is creating a visual picture of the acupuncture meridian system by evaluating electrical conductivity in the skin at the major point for evaluating each of the acupuncture meridians. And one of the systems of points uses points found in the wrist and in the ankle. And there being 12 meridians, 6 of these meridians run over the arm and wrist, and 6 of the meridians run on each side of the body over the ankle as well. And by measuring the skin conductivity at what we call the source point, and it was named that because it's the source for evaluating the entire acupuncture meridian, the level of energy and vitality in that entire meridian, no matter how long that meridian is, from the shortest to the heart, which we evaluate at the wrist, to the very longest, which is the bladder, beginning between the eyes, running over the head, down the neck and back to the little toe. And that meridian is evaluated down on the foot. And by evaluating the electrical conductivity of all 12 meridians on both sides of the body, meaning 24 meridians total, we can then create a chart, and we can look at what meridians are relatively high and what we call in excess, and what meridians are relatively low or deficient. And the acupuncture points which link each meridian to every other meridian in the body can then be used to open up this plugged up system of vitality conductivity in our system and allow the energy to balance out. So if we have, for instance, a liver which is too high and a heart which is too low, there's a very specific point we can use which will tend to actually calm the liver but strengthen the heart, because liver energy flows into heart. And all the acupuncture points are like this. They're not adding energy into our system just by putting a needle in, nor, unless they're left in too long, are they creating a deficiency in energy. what they're doing is opening up a channel. In a sense, like clearing a pipe which has been plugged up so that the vitality can flow through there and disperse throughout the meridian system. And that can include disperse throughout a region of the body. So for instance, if we're treating difficulties or symptoms in the neck and shoulder, we might treat points in the neck and shoulder to open this area up and allow that vitality to flow through. However, we might just as likely treat points in the arms and hands or in the feet and foreleg, because there are meridians that run through this neck and shoulder area and therefore can have a powerful effect here as well. So we may treat with what's called local points in the area where the complaints are, and yet we may often treat with points that are seemingly far away from the area of disturbance. But I liken it to a car. That when the car, say, gets a flat tire, or say the car runs out of gas, it would be foolish to get out and kick the tire because it stopped turning over. The tire stopped turning over either because it's flat or we're out of gas. And so we have to look at what is behind why there's a disturbance there. And it is not only a physical condition. It is associated with a direct blockage or excess of this vitality that we call qi. And the acupuncture points are one of the key ways, not the only way. They are one of the key ways to open the flow of this vitality and allow the body naturally to create a healing response. So what might a treatment actually be like? Well, the famous way of treating with acupuncture is just that, the puncturing of the skin. And that's where the name acupuncture comes from. But considering that at least half of the population has a concern about needles, then there are other ways of treating that are known as meridian therapy, where no puncturing of the skin is involved and no pain or potential pain is involved as well. Although the case is that with a good acupuncturist who knows the precise placement of the needles, acupuncture is rarely painful. There may be sensations elicited, such as a sense of fullness, sometimes a rush of a sense of energy or charge, up or down the arm, the leg, the back. But this is what the Chinese call Tai Chi, or hitting the energy. And they found this to be a releasing of this built up and blocked vital force that when the needle was placed in the right point and in the right way, it could often produce an almost instantaneous release and opening of the flow of this vital force. However, we now have modern ways of treating which do not involve needles. And these include a device called a Tai Shin, which is simply tapping firmly a point long enough to get it to release. No needle involved. In a sense, it's more like shiatsu, which is pressure point therapy on a specific point and location until the vitality in that point is released and then free to flow again. There's also electrical stimulation of points, which is so gentle it is not uncomfortable at all, and a very light electrical stimulation, and sometimes even an alternating current of positive and negative at very low and slight levels can cause an acupuncture point to release as well. And one of the very up and coming, growing in popularity methods of meridian therapy is the laser. And the laser is an intense, focused beam of a special type of light, known as a laser, on a very specific point, just as we would treat with a needle, but in this case no needles are involved. And we're using a laser device which is believed to stimulate the submolecular level that the laser is on, activating the mitochondria within the cells that are being treated. And the mitochondria is the source of energy and vitality for the entire cell. Whether it's a skin cell, a muscle cell, a thyroid cell, a cell related to the brain, whatever type of cell can potentially be stimulated by a laser device. There are probably many other things which can stimulate these acupuncture points, including, and this will be a matter of research for the future, color and sound. But the ways that we use in our office are primarily needle therapy, tapping or physical stimulation, and laser, because I've found these to be the most effective in treating the patients that come into my office. So as a patient, what might you expect when you came into our office? Well, we would sit down and I would ask you about your symptoms. And you might find that I would ask you a few questions that might be different from what you've been asked about if you've only been to a medical doctor. And then, as part of the evaluation, I would test your pulses on each wrist, and then we would sit down and we would do an EMI, an electromeridian image. And that would be put on a computer screen, and it'd also be printed out so that when you left the office, you would actually leave with this color chart showing the state of the acupuncture meridians. And from that, I would go over with you energetically what meridians were high, what meridians were low, and what meridians were balanced. And from that, decide on what acupuncture points we would treat. I would ask you if you're comfortable with needles or not, and if you might want to try needles. These are incredibly thin and fine. It can be very, very comfortable. And most people leave the office feeling better than they walked in. That's very, very common, both mentally and physically. Patients find acupuncture to be not only very helpful, usually for their physical symptoms, but also very balancing for our mental and emotional states as well. However, if you are uncomfortable with even the thought of trying needles, which is fine, then we would do an acupuncture treatment that was not puncturing the skin, but was meridian therapy with Tei Shin, or more likely with laser stimulation of the points. And a treatment might take anywhere from 15 minutes up to possibly, say, 45 minutes, depending on the severity of the condition when you come in. From there, I would look to see how you respond to that first and initial treatment, and then I would make a suggestion to you, and possibly on that very first visit as well, about when to return for another visit. Also in our clinic, we use a lot of herbal formulas that are custom built for each person that comes in, and we find nutritional supplements to be essential for almost everyone that comes in. And the way that we evaluate nutritional needs we'll be talking about in our next section on healing at the Personal Healing Center.